but you don't make it to the store. You never come home. And your mother waits and waits. And when you don't return, she calls the police, and they search the neighborhood, the streets, the woods near the abandoned Willowbrook State School, that massive, decaying institution that's been closed for years, with its dark buildings and underground tunnels, where homeless people live, where kids dare each other to explore, where parents tell their children never to go. The police search those woods, those buildings, those tunnels, and 48 days later, they find you in a shallow grave near the abandoned buildings, strangled, murdered, hidden where no one would think to look, except someone who knew those woods, who knew those buildings, who lived there, who had access and knowledge and opportunity. And when the police arrest the man who killed you, when they search his camp in those woods, when they connect him to other missing children, the neighborhood realizes something terrifying. The stories they've been telling for years, the urban legend about Cropsey, the hook-handed man who lives in the woods and kidnaps children, the boogeyman parents used to scare kids into behaving. He's real. He's been real the whole time. And his name is Andre Rand. This actually happened. Staten Island, New York, 1970s through 1980s. 5 children disappeared. Only one body was ever found. And the man convicted of taking them has never said where the others are, has never told the families, has never given them closure. He's in prison, has been for decades, comes up for parole regularly, gets denied every time because he won't tell them, won't admit what he did, won't let those families bury their children. Welcome to Mind Vale. This is the story of Cropsey, the urban legend that existed before the crimes, the boogeyman who became real, the man who lived in the tunnels beneath an abandoned asylum, who knew every hiding spot, every secret passage, every place to hide a body, and who took children one by one for over 15 years, while everyone thought Cropsey was just a story. But before we count the missing children, before we search those tunnels, before we understand how an urban legend can come true, you need to understand Willowbrook, because Willowbrook State School is where this nightmare begins, and Willowbrook is its own horror story. 1947, Staten Island, New York. Willowbrook State School opens. It's supposed to be a facility for children with intellectual disabilities, a place of care, treatment, education, support for families who can't manage their children's special needs. The state promises modern facilities, trained staff, humane treatment. It's going to be a model institution. By the 1960s, Willowbrook is hell on earth, designed for 4,000 residents, actually housing over 6,000. Children living in their own filth, naked, unwashed, sitting on concrete floors with no furniture, no toys, no stimulation, just rooms full of screaming children, understaffed, underfunded, abusive, neglectful, a warehouse for children society doesn't want. 1965. Robert Kennedy visits Willowbrook. He's horrified, calls it a snake pit, says the conditions are inhumane, criminal, that these children are being treated worse than animals. He demands reform, investigation, change. Nothing happens. 1972. Geraldo Rivera, then a local reporter, sneaks a camera into Willowbrook. What he films shocks the nation. Children tied to beds, left in cribs for years, covered in sores in their own waste, some beaten by staff, others so neglected they've developed preventable medical conditions. Children who could have been helped instead left to rot. The footage airs on ABC. America is outraged. Lawsuits are filed. The state agrees to close Willowbrook slowly over years, transferring residents to smaller facilities, better care, more humane treatment, and by 1987, Willowbrook is officially closed. Empty buildings, overgrown grounds, miles of underground tunnels connecting the dormitories, dark, decaying, dangerous, and homeless people move in, squatters, drifters, people with nowhere else to go, people who know those tunnels, who can hide in those buildings, who can live there unseen, unmonitored, unwatched, and among them is Andre Rand. Andre Rand worked at Willowbrook, was employed as a custodian in the 1960s and 70s, had access to the entire facility, the dormitories, the tunnels, the isolated buildings where the most disabled children were kept, where screams were normal, where death was common, where nobody asked questions. And when Willowbrook closed, Rand didn't leave. He stayed, lived in the abandoned buildings, knew every tunnel, every hiding spot, every forgotten room. But here's what makes this story truly disturbing. Before Andre Rand, before any children disappeared, the legend of Cropsey already existed. Staten Island kids in the 1960s were telling stories about a man with a hook for a hand who lived in the woods near Willowbrook, who escaped from an insane asylum, who kidnapped children, dragged them into the woods, and they were never seen again. It was just a story, a campfire tale, a way to scare your friends. Parents used it to keep kids from wandering off. Don't go near Willowbrook. Cropsey will get you, and kids would laugh. Tell more elaborate versions, add details, make it scarier. It was fun, it was harmless, it was fiction, until it wasn't. July 9th, 1972. 5-year-old Alice Pereira vanishes. Last seen playing outside her apartment building in Port Richmond, Staten Island. Her parents search, the police search, but Alice is gone. No witnesses, no clues, no body. She's never found. Case goes cold, chalked up to a runaway, a kidnapping by a stranger, a tragedy with no answers. July 15th, 1981. 7-year-old Holly Ann Hughes disappears, walking home from a friend's house in the Richmond Town neighborhood. Gone. Vanished. Her mother is frantic. Reports her missing immediately. Police investigate, search the area, interview neighbors. But Holly has vanished without a trace, no body, no evidence, no answers. Another child lost. August 1983. 11-year-old Tia Heese Jackson goes missing. Last seen heading to a local store. Never arrives, never comes home. Her mother waits, calls the police. Search parties form. The neighborhood looks everywhere, but Tia Heese is gone. Another disappearance, another family destroyed, another unsolved case. March 1984. 10-year-old Hank Gafforio, gone. Disappears from his Staten Island neighborhood. No witnesses, no leads. Parents devastated, community terrified. What is happening to these children? Why can't the police find them? Why are they vanishing without a trace? 4 children, over 12 years, all from Staten Island, all vanished completely. And here's what connects them. They all disappeared near the Willowbrook grounds, near those abandoned buildings, near those tunnels, where Andre Rand lived, where he knew every inch, where he could hide anything, anyone, and nobody would find them. But the police don't make the connection yet. 4 missing children over 12 years, in different neighborhoods, different circumstances. It doesn't look like a pattern, doesn't look like a serial kidnapper. Just tragic coincidences, bad luck, random disappearances that happen in any city, until Jennifer Schweiger. July 15th, 1987. 12-year-old Jennifer Schweiger goes missing. She has Down syndrome, lives with her parents in the Mariners Harbor neighborhood, and she's last seen near the Willowbrook grounds, near those abandoned buildings. And this time, the police focus their investigation there, on the buildings, the tunnels, the hidden camps, because they've heard rumors about homeless people living there, about strange activity, about someone who knows those buildings too well. They find evidence, recent activity, campfires, food storage, someone living there, someone who knows these buildings intimately. And they find Andre Rand, arrest him, not for Jennifer's disappearance, not yet, for trespassing, for living on state property, for violating the closure of Willowbrook. And while he's in custody, they search, intensively, desperately, looking for Jennifer. 48 days after Jennifer disappeared, police find her body in a shallow grave near the abandoned Willowbrook buildings where Rand had been living, strangled, murdered, hidden in the exact place where someone who knew those woods would hide something, exactly where Rand's camp was. And the police know, absolutely know, Andre Rand killed Jennifer Schweiger. But as they investigate, as they dig into Rand's background, as they talk to people who knew him, they realize something worse. The timeline matches. Rand was at Willowbrook when Alice disappeared, when Holly disappeared, when Tia Hees and Hank disappeared. He had access, opportunity, knowledge of the area, and he has no alibi for any of the disappearances. They look deeper, talk to people who knew Rand, people who'd seen him with children, and witnesses come forward. Someone saw Rand with Holly Ann Hughes the day she disappeared, saw them walking together toward the Willowbrook grounds. Someone else saw him near where Tia Hees was last seen. Another witness puts him near the location where Hank vanished. And here's where it gets truly disturbing. People who'd spent time around Rand remember things he said. Strange things, disturbing things about children, about how children belong in special places, away from society, about how he understood them, how he could help them, how they were safe with him. Comments that seemed odd at the time, but now, with children missing, sound like confessions. Rand is charged with Jennifer's kidnapping, not murder initially, just kidnapping, because proving he killed her is harder than proving he took her. But everyone knows. The police know. The families of the other missing children know. The community knows. Andre Rand killed Jennifer Schweiger and probably killed Holly, Alice, Tia Hees, Hank, and possibly others. Children whose disappearances were never connected, never investigated, never solved. The trial starts. Prosecution presents evidence. Witnesses who saw Rand near the crime scenes. Forensic evidence connecting him to Jennifer. Testimony about his behavior, his statements, his access to Willowbrook. And the defense? The defense argues there's no proof, no confession, no physical evidence putting him at the exact moment of kidnapping. Just circumstantial connections, suspicious patterns, but not proof beyond reasonable doubt. Except there's more. Because as the trial proceeds, more information comes out about Andre Rand, about who he is, what he did at Willowbrook, and why he might have targeted these specific children. Andre Rand worked at Willowbrook during its worst years, the 1960s, when thousands of children with disabilities were housed there, when abuse was rampant, when children died regularly and nobody investigated, when staff could do almost anything without consequences, and Rand had access, had authority, had opportunities that nobody tracked, nobody monitored, nobody remembered. How many children died at Willowbrook during Rand's employment? Hundreds, from neglect, from abuse, from medical conditions, from accidents, from causes that were never properly investigated. And if some of them didn't die naturally, if someone was hurting them intentionally, who would know? Who would investigate? Who would care about disabled children in an institution society had already forgotten? The prosecution can't prove this, can't charge him with crimes that happened decades ago at Willowbrook, can't exhume bodies or investigate deaths that were ruled natural or accidental at the time. But the implication is there. The pattern is there. Andre Rand spent years working with vulnerable children in an environment with no oversight, no accountability, no consequences, and now, decades later, children are disappearing near the same institution, and he's living there, in the tunnels, in the hidden places, where he worked, where he knows every secret. The jury deliberates, and in 1988, they convict Andre Rand of kidnapping Jennifer Schweiger. Not murder, kidnapping. He's sentenced to 25 years to life. And while he's in prison, prosecutors build cases for the other children, for Holly Ann Hughes, for Alice, Tia Hees, and Hank. Cases based on witness statements, timeline connections, circumstantial evidence that Rand was involved. 2004, 17 years after Jennifer's murder, Andre Rand goes on trial again, this time for Holly Ann Hughes' kidnapping. The witnesses testify. The evidence is presented, and Rand is convicted. Another 25 years to life, 2 consecutive sentences, which means even if he gets parole on the first, he has to serve the second. He's going to die in prison unless he tells them where the bodies are, unless he gives the families closure, unless he admits what he did. But Rand won't talk, won't admit, won't tell the families where their children are buried. Holly Ann Hughes' body has never been found. Alice Pereira's body has never been found. Tia Heese Jackson's body has never been found. Hank Gaforio's body has never been found. Their families have lived for decades not knowing, not being able to bury their children, not being able to grieve properly, just waiting, hoping, praying that someday Rand will show mercy, will tell them, will let them bring their children home. He never has. He's come up for parole multiple times. 2008, 2010, 2015, 2017, 2019, and every time the families of the missing children show up, beg the parole board to keep him locked up, to never let him out, to make sure he dies in prison, because he never told them where the bodies are, never gave them closure, never admitted what he did, just sits in prison, maintaining his innocence, saying he's a victim of circumstantial evidence, of coincidence, of bad luck. But here's what the investigators believe, based on witness statements, timeline analysis, Rand's access and opportunity. Andre Rand is responsible for at least 5 kidnappings and murders. Jennifer Schweiger, Holly Ann Hughes, Alice Pereira, Tia Hees Jackson, Hank Gaforio, and possibly more. Possibly children whose disappearances were never connected to him. Possibly victims from his Willowbrook years. Possibly a body count that will never be known because he's never talking. And here's the most disturbing part. The urban legend of Cropsey existed before Andre Rand started kidnapping children. Kids in Staten Island were telling stories about a hook-handed man in the woods years before the disappearances. So where did the legend come from? Was there an earlier predator, an earlier kidnapper whose crimes inspired the stories? Or did the legend itself attract Rand, Give him ideas. Show him that people already feared the woods near Willowbrook, that children already had nightmares about someone like him. Did the legend create the monster, or did the monster fulfill the legend? We'll never know, because Rand isn't talking, and the people who might remember earlier crimes are dead or can't be found, and the legend just keeps growing. Cropsey, the boogeyman, the hook-handed man, the kidnapper in the woods, except now he's not a story. He's Andre Rand, in prison, real, documented, convicted, and the children are really gone. In 2009, a documentary called Cropsey was released. Filmmakers Joshua Zeman and Barbara Brancaccio investigated the urban legend and the real crimes, interviewed witnesses, families of the missing children, former Willowbrook employees, and tried to understand how a campfire story became a serial kidnapper, how a legend became reality, how Andre Rand went from custodian to convicted child killer. The documentary reveals disturbing details. Witnesses who saw Rand with the children but didn't report it at the time because they didn't want to get involved. Former Willowbrook employees who remember Rand as strange, inappropriate with children, someone who made them uncomfortable but who kept his job because Willowbrook was desperate for staff and didn't ask questions. Families who've spent decades searching for answers that will never come because Rand refuses to speak. And the documentary asks the question everyone's been asking for decades. Where are the bodies? Where did Rand hide them? The Willowbrook grounds are massive, 385 acres, miles of tunnels, countless buildings, abandoned rooms, sealed chambers, places where you could hide a body and nobody would find it for decades or forever. Did Rand bury them, hide them in the tunnels, seal them in walls, dispose of them in ways that make discovery impossible? Searchers have tried multiple times over decades, ground-penetrating radar, cadaver dogs, excavations, tunnel explorations. But the Willowbrook grounds are too large, too complex, too many places to hide something small, like a child's body. And if Rand used the tunnels, if he sealed bodies in walls or buried them in areas that have since been demolished or built over, they might never be found. Holly, Alice, Tia-Heese, and Hank might stay missing forever. And that's the torture for the families, not knowing, not being able to bury their children, not being able to grieve properly, just waiting, decade after decade, for Rand to have mercy, for him to finally tell the truth, for him to let them bring their children home. But he never does. Every parole hearing, he maintains innocence. Every interview, he says he's been wrongly convicted. Every opportunity to confess, he remains silent. Why won't he tell? Why not give the families closure? Some psychologists say it's his last bit of power, his only control. As long as he holds the secret of where the bodies are, he matters. He's important. He's in control. The moment he tells, he loses that, becomes just another prisoner, forgettable, powerless. So he holds the information, uses it, leverages it, keeps the family suffering because their suffering gives him relevance. Others say he's genuinely innocent, that the convictions are based on circumstantial evidence, that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, that coincidence and bad luck made him look guilty, that there's another explanation for all of this, that the real Cropsey is still out there or never existed, or was multiple people, or was something else entirely. But the evidence is hard to dismiss. Witnesses placing him with the victims, his access to Willowbrook, his knowledge of the grounds, his employment history working with vulnerable children, his presence near every disappearance, his lack of alibi, his suspicious behavior, his statements about children, the timeline that matches perfectly, the pattern that's too consistent to be coincidence. Andre Rand is Cropsey. The investigators know it, the families know it, the community knows it, and probably Rand knows it too. But he's never admitting it, never confessing, never giving those families peace, just sitting in prison, getting older, coming up for parole, getting denied, and holding his secrets until he dies. He's 80 years old now, still in prison, still eligible for parole hearings, still maintaining innocence, and the families still show up, still beg the board to keep him locked up, still hope that before he dies, he'll tell them. We'll finally have mercy. We'll finally let them bury their children. But it's been over 40 years since Alice disappeared, 42 years since Holly vanished, 40 years since Tia Hees and Hank were taken, and 36 years since Jennifer was found. And the families are still waiting, still searching, still hoping, and Rand is still silent. This is the legacy of Cropsey, an urban legend that came true, a boogeyman who was real, a man who lived in the tunnels beneath an abandoned asylum and took children, one by one, for over 15 years, and who's never told anyone where most of them are buried, who's kept that secret for decades, who will probably take it to his grave. And the worst part, Cropsey is still being told. Kids in Staten Island still tell the story, still scare each other with tales of the hook-handed man in the woods. But now, it's not just a story. Now, it's a warning. Now it's real. Now it's Andre Rand. And the children who disappeared aren't fictional victims in a campfire tale. They're Alice, Holly, Tia Hees, Hank, and Jennifer. Real children with real families who've never gotten closure, who've never gotten answers, who've never gotten to say goodbye. That's the true horror of Cropsey. Not that a boogeyman was real, but that real children died. Real families were destroyed. Real lives were ruined. And the man responsible has never shown remorse, never given answers, never let the healing begin. Just sits in prison, silent, holding his secrets, maintaining his innocence, while families wait for closure that will probably never come. The Willowbrook grounds are being redeveloped now. New buildings, new purposes, parts of it converted to a college campus, other areas demolished. And somewhere under that ground, somewhere in those tunnels, somewhere in places that might never be found, 4 children are buried. Holly Ann Hughes, Alice Pereira, Tia Hayase Jackson, Hank Gaforio, waiting, hidden, lost, because Andre Rand won't tell, won't speak, won't give their families peace. Tomorrow, we're talking about a ghost. Not an urban legend, not a metaphor, but a documented haunting that killed a man. The Bell Witch, Tennessee, 1800s, witnessed by hundreds of people, investigated by Andrew Jackson, documented in court records, a ghost that spoke, that attacked, that murdered, and that some people say is still there, still active, still dangerous. But tonight, remember the real Cropsey. Remember that urban legends can come true, that boogeymen can be real, that monsters sometimes live in the places we warn children to avoid. Remember Alice, Holly, Tia Hees, Hank, and Jennifer. Remember that they were real children with real families who deserve to be found, who deserve to come home, who deserve closure that Andre Rand refuses to give. And if you ever hear the legend of Cropsey, if someone tells you about the hook-handed man in the woods, remember, it's not just a story. It's a memorial, a warning, a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who smile and work in institutions and live in tunnels and take children when nobody's watching. Andre Rand is in prison, but he won because he has what the families want: information, knowledge, the location of the bodies, and he's never given it to them, never surrendering his power, never letting them heal. And that's the cruelest thing of all, not that he took their children, but that he won't give them back, even in death, even decades later. Even when he has nothing to lose, he just won't tell. That's Cropsey, the urban legend that became Andre Rand, the boogeyman who kidnapped children in Staten Island for 15 years, the man who lived in the tunnels beneath Willowbrook, who knew every hiding place, every secret, every way to make a child disappear forever. And the families are still waiting, still hoping, still searching for the day Andre Rand finally tells the truth, finally shows mercy, finally lets their children come home. But every year that passes makes it less likely. Every parole hearing where he maintains innocence makes it clearer. He's never telling, never confessing, never giving them peace. The legend lives on. Kids still tell the story, still scare each other, still talk about Cropsey in the woods. But now they know. Now they understand. Now the story has a name: Andre Rand, and a body count. 5 children, maybe more, and 4 families who will never stop searching, never stop hoping, never stop waiting for closure. Sleep well, and remember, some urban legends are real, some boogeymen exist, some monsters live among us, and sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that actually happened, the ones with real victims, real families, real pain that never ends. This is Cropsey, day 4 of our Halloween week. 2 more days of darkness, and tomorrow's ghost is different because the Bell Witch has court records, witness testimony, historical documentation, and a body. A man she killed in 1820 in Tennessee, and she's never stopped haunting, never stopped being seen, never stopped being real. Welcome to Halloween, where the line between legend and reality disappears, where the stories we tell to scare ourselves turn out to be true, where monsters have names and faces and prison records, and where some children never come home.